Hey, welcome to my Permanently Filipino playlist where I basically talk about everything my husband and I did as we transitioned from the United States to the Philippines to become permanent residents. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, then you already know we have lived in the Philippines for over a year. And within that year, we became permanent residents. So after the next two videos, this video and the next one, this playlist will be complete in my mind because we will have achieved everything that I wanted to achieve within a year. And I think I'm going to start, this is me thinking in real time, another playlist, and it's going to focus on just day-to-day living in the Philippines and what it's like. Definitely the perspective of how it feels, the difference between the United States and the Philippines, and just what it really means to be retirees in the Philippines, and the decisions that we make because we want to buy property and we want to build a home, and there's a lot of things that we want to do. We have other goals now. And I think I'm going to just start a playlist that will focus on all of our other goals. And I'll keep this playlist primarily for those who wanted to figure out permanent residency. That's what I think. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Anyway, so this video is going to focus on the timeline, and I'm going to refer to my notes a lot so I stay focused. It's also going to address the pros and cons of using a visa agency or not. And then my next video, the last video for this playlist, will be the questions that I had asked along the way in regards to getting a 13G visa. All the things that we needed to think about if this visa was the best visa for us as a couple. So to start this video off, I'm going to talk about the timeline first, okay? So, and again, I'm referring to my notes so I stay focused. So I already had a relationship with the JRC agency because they worked on trying to get dual citizenship for me. And that didn't work out because the end of June, I just decided we're fine. I don't need to keep hearing, no, it's not going to work out. Let's just move on with a 13G visa. So since they already had a contract with me, my husband then needed to sign a contract with the JRC because the 13G visa not only gives permanent residence to me, but my husband as well. And if we had children, it would include them as well. And it no money down. You don't have to put, I think the SRRV, you have to put maybe 10,000 US dollars or 20,000 US dollars, depending upon your status. I'm not familiar with it, but that's a whole nother video. And if my husband ever gets an SRRV video, I'll just add to this playlist. I think that's what I'm going to do because we were talking about that. But that's for another time. That's in the next video. We'll talk about that. So my husband needed to sign a contract basically. So 2 days later, we received that via email and signed it. We paid via Zoom. I think you could do a Gcash or you could do a bank transfer. Super easy, but everything was handled like seamlessly. And then it was the beginning of July that we needed to start scheduling for the Bureau of Quarantine and the National Bureau of Investigation appointments. Since the visa agency handled that, that was one less thing we had to worry about. But at least we were notified via email. Love the fact that through the agency, we just received these email notifications. Initially, they tried to use us to schedule the appointment because using our email, but then they simplified it just using the agency doing that. If you do this on your own, it would be a completely different, it'd be a similar process, but I'm not quite sure if you'd be able to schedule on the same day. That's a lot of coordinating in my mind. While we were waiting for our appointments, I needed to get two of our documents. I needed an apostle for them. Now, before I left the United States, I tried to get as many apostles on as many documents as I possibly could, just to try to make the whole process a little less complicated. Because if I hadn't done that before I left the United States, I would have to do all of that here in the Philippines and mailing things back and forth, and that would really add to the time frame. That would make a lot of complications, I think. Maybe not. Using the visa agency kind of helped that. So anyway, I needed to get an apostle for two things. The two things basically was proof of income, because I have my teacher's pension. That's what we live on. And then my husband and I were married in Las Vegas, so our marriage license needed an apostle for that. So basically, in their mind, for the Philippines, they needed your proof of financial capability, or a proof of retirement also, and evidence that my husband and I were married. And those need to have an apostle. So if you're still in the United States, take care of that while you're there. If not, you'll need to get an apostle while you're in the Philippines before you move forward with a visa. Our Bureau of Quarantine and Bureau of Investigations appointments were scheduled on the same day, beginning of August. Watch my previous two videos because I give way more detail about that. And both of those appointments were in person, obviously. And I would say the cost of that, I'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, when I talk about the decision about pros and cons using a visa agency. But because we live in Lipa, and we have to travel to Manila, we also don't have a car. Anytime we do an in-person visit, that's costing us about 2,500 pesos, which really isn't that big of a deal. That includes transportation, and if we wanted to go out to eat at the same time, because you're going to at least have one meal out, most likely. And so I just kind of cushion it with whatever you're doing, and then whatever miscellaneous thing you're going to do because you're in Manila. Now, if you can take care of all of this at a Bureau of Immigration that's closer to you, then the transportation costs that we incurred won't pertain to you. But every time we do an in-person visit, it typically was about 2,500 pesos. So then I think it was a week later, we received the results from both appointments, and we found out we didn't need to go back to the National Bureau of Investigations for an interview. If something came up from the NBI, then yes, we'd need an interview, but no, we're angels over here, so we didn't need an interview. Then the visa after that, after both of those appointments, then there's the visa application needed to be then submitted, and it was submitted on August 15th. So 3 days after we received the results, then the application was submitted, and that was taken care of via email. And then when was it? A week after that, after that submission, we had to go back to the Bureau of Immigration Intramuros to do the biometrics. Again, I did a video, more detailed video on the biometrics for that. That was in person. So because it was in person, another 2,500 pesos for us. Really no big deal. Then we found out, based on the receipts, some of the things, time frame will be based on the receipts. Not so much that we received an email about it, but because now that we have all of our documents, I could see when certain parts of the process were either confirmed or when they occurred. So it was on October 16th that the yellow ACR I-card was issued. That means it basically was approved. I did receive notification on that via email. I think because I wanted proof of that so I could give it to our bank to prove to them that we are working on our permanent residency. On November 6th, we received a 13G certified true copy indicating we were approved, and that was taken care of via email. My husband's yellow ACR I-card was issued on November 19th, which was interesting because because the visa's through me, mine naturally, I would think, was issued first. So my ACR I-card was issued first, and then after that, then they process your dependents. My husband is considered a dependent. He is not a fan of being called a dependent, which I don't blame him, but then the dependents then have the process for them to get their ACR I-card. All of that was handled via email. We didn't have to show up. We already did the biometrics, so then they could go through and process everything they needed to process in regards to the cards. What I didn't realize, and I mentioned this in canceling my voluntary ACR I-card, I needed to go back to Intramuros. Now this might not be a step for you. It was a step for me. So this was another in-person visit. I did a video on it, so another 2,500 pesos, which was fine because then we could go to the Mall of Asia and just make a day of it, which was fine for me. And then on November 26th, so it is November 30th, so this week, we went and retrieved our ACR I-cards and all of our documents, and we did do that in person, and it was a great day. Celebrated at the Mall of Asia at our favorite Thai restaurant, and was able to pick up all of our documents at the JRC visa agency office, and it was nice to be able to thank the 3 out of 4 people who assisted us throughout the entire process and be able to spend some time with them. So that's basically our timeline in regards to getting a 13G visa. Now, this second part is the pros and cons to use a visa agency or not. Okay, so I'm going to first start off with some cons of doing it yourself, the pros of doing it yourself, and then move on to the pros and cons of using an agency. So we're going to start off with the cons of doing it yourself. And prior to getting a 13G visa, I worked on getting my dual citizenship by myself. And as I have said before, the Bureau of Immigration does a beautiful job giving you a nice instructions list, guidelines, a checklist of everything you need to do to work on either your dual citizenship or any type of visa. I mean, it's super impressive. However, when you do it yourself, there's a lot of frustration that comes involved. Part of it is because you're concerned if the decisions that you're making, is this the best decision for you? You don't really have somebody to kind of talk to and make you understand if this is best for you or not. A lot of it, I mean, my husband couldn't even answer the questions, and when I did talk to somebody through the embassy, or even when I emailed somebody, I was living in the United States and I was emailing somebody at Bureau of Immigration in Intramuros, I never truly felt confident that I was doing the right thing. And the biggest concern is, am I making a costly mistake? Not because going down a path that might not work for me, but then spending the money to do something that wasn't a good fit for me was always a concern. And then especially when I was talking, one of the times we made a phone call while we were in Michigan to talk to somebody at the Bureau of Immigration. And it was just not a good experience because I didn't speak Tagalog. Since I didn't speak Tagalog, and the person who answered the phone really didn't speak a lot of English, the level of communication, it was a big fail, to be honest. And I didn't realize if I just used Facebook, shockingly, if I had just used Facebook Messenger and communicated that way, somebody who knew English would be able to respond to me. I never realized that was like an option. I wouldn't think that a government agency would use Facebook Messenger as one of their main forms of communication, but they do. And you get some very thorough answers from them via Messenger. And I could pretty much attest that I trusted every response that I received from them. So, but at the time, I didn't know. But that doesn't make it easier for me to know if I'm still making the right decision for myself or not. And the other issue was constantly having to go in person, especially if I didn't live in the area. Like, you would have transportation costs. So for us in Lipa, 2 trikes, 2 grabs, 3 buses, and that comes to about 1,500 pesos. 1,500 pesos for us to travel, just traveling. And then I tack on another 1,000 pesos for food and miscellaneous, so that's how I got to 2,500 pesos every time we needed to do something in person. And before, when I was working on my dual citizenship, I mean, I lived in Makati at the time. I lived in Parañaque at the time. So then it would be a Grab that we would have to take. However, I would recommend the bus, like 15 pesos to take just bus for transportation. But at the time I didn't know, because we just arrived and we didn't understand the whole transportation system. We used I think it was the MRT. Loved the MRT. That was about 45 pesos. But it just made for a long day, and not knowing how long we were going to be at the Bureau of Immigration, that was just adding to the level of stress. So clearly I'm listing all of the cons. It's just a lot of mental stress of doing the right thing. The pros of doing yourself, and they're definitely pros, is that the Bureau of Immigration not only gives you a beautiful checklist and guideline, it's cheaper. It is so much cheaper just to do it yourself. Now, I will admit, just because they post how much it costs, the Bureau of Immigration fees are not all listed on their website. Just FYI, always bring extra money. But at least you get a general guideline of how much you're going to spend. I will say LTO's website, everything that it was, however much it said on their website that it cost, that's how much it costs. Okay, let's see. The other pro of doing it is that it really, if I just followed the guidelines, it was less stressful in that regards, because I could just go through the little checklist. I mean, I'm a checklist type of gal, so it did make me feel better, like, okay, I could put a check next to that because I finished that. But if you think about all the cons of, okay, did I write my letter the way I should have written my letter so it's understood about my intent? I don't know. Okay, so That's the other part of using the guideline. That's a pro, but it's also a con. Like, did I really fulfill what they were asking me to do? I hope so. So now using an agency. Clearly we used an agency, but going through the pros and cons, I think is a really important step for you to take before you decide to use an agency or not. Here's the cons. The cons for using an agency, and I don't care which agency you use. I believe these are like universal cons here. You're trusting somebody else to do your legal business. So make sure you know that the agency you're using has testimonies. That just do some investigative work on the agency you're using. Do they have a history? How long have they been in business? Do you know somebody who's used that agency before? What are the testimonies? Yes, JRC agency has a website, but lots of people have websites, and lots of people have YouTube channels, and lots of people have fake testimonies. So just make sure you do your investigative work. The other thing is, this is the biggest con. I was basically living without my United States passport for 6 months, over 6 months, something like that. And even though I had a passport card, and a lot of countries don't care if you have a passport card, it just made me feel better when I didn't have my passport. And I mentioned in previous video, get at least 6 copies of your passport, including that visa stamp. Anyway, I talked about that in a previous video. I didn't like handing over my passport and having it not be in my possession for that long of a time. I wasn't doing anything crazy where I needed it. I was prepared. Not having it, people trusted the fact that I had a paper copy. They didn't question it, so I'm grateful for that. But coming from another country, living in a new country, it made me super uncomfortable handing over my passport. The other con, and this is a big con, it's expensive using an agency. So according to the Bureau of Immigration, if I looked at all of the fees of just what it costs for me to get certain things done, here's the little rundown. For the ACRI card, our yellow cards for each of us, 9,330 pesos for me, 9,330 pesos for my husband's card. For paying for the express processing was another 2,500 pesos for each card. Getting 2 apostles, that was 500 pesos. The Bureau of Immigration costs 2,946 pesos for my appointment, 2,946 pesos for his appointment. For the NBI appointment, I checked their website, 160 pesos for my appointment, 160 pesos for his appointment, or the processing. I've not found anything else if it was more or not, so I was shocked. 160 pesos, really. For me to cancel, this might not apply to you, but for me to cancel my Balik Bayan ACRI card, that cost 3,200 pesos. And then, let's see, make sure. So when it's all said and done, for the Bureau of Immigration, it cost a total of 43,572 pesos, which is about 570 US dollars, okay? If I just followed what the website said, the Bureau of Immigration's website, according to them, not including all of the appointments, just the processing for the visa and only pertaining the Bureau of Immigration. 8,000, their website said 8,640 pesos, $147, which in reality, if you think back what I just said a moment ago, minus the 2,500 pesos express processing fee, it really was 9,330 pesos. So there's a discrepancy, just FYI. Just because they post it on the Bureau of Immigration, please bring extra pesos for that. So the difference between what we paid, and I guess I'm not going to necessarily share how much we paid through JRC to use the agency, because the fee might be different for you because your situation would be different, but it definitely was a huge difference, at least like 600, 700 US dollars difference. And after I talked to my husband, this gets us to our pros. So I'm going to transition to the pros. After talking to my husband, after our gasp, like, oh, we spent this much for just processing the 13G visa, not processing the dual citizenship. So be aware of the fact I'm only talking about processing the 13G visa. The whole dual citizenship thing is a whole nother thing. But after talking to my husband, transitioning to the pros, it was worth it. It was so worth it using a visa agency to just take care of everything. When I was doing everything by myself, and the level of frustration and the emotional angst that I was going through, and I really could not even clearly communicate how much it affected me. Like, I could share how I felt to my husband, but it was almost like, and if you watch my previous videos, maybe you'd get it, but it's just the slight personal, like, failure every single time. Like, this didn't work out, this didn't work out. And all your dreams are going to be dashed because you're just not doing the right thing and you're not figuring it out. It's just the stress of it all. They just made it, the visa agency just made it less stressful, seamless, really. And to know that you just have that support along the way, every single question I had, they answered. Every single one. I mean, I can't think of a single thing that I had asked that they just kind of left me hanging. It might have taken them a moment to figure it out too, because they might not have known the answer, but they went and found out the answer for me. To receive constant feedback of, okay, we're moving on to this step, we're doing this next. You need to be prepared. You need to have this, this, and this, to have like a list similar to what the Bureau of Immigration shared, but more like what my videos shared. My previous videos of how we had to prepare to go to the Bureau of Quarantine, how we had to prepare for that. That's how I felt every time I received an email from JRC Visa Agency. It just made me feel better knowing that they were so thorough in their guidelines that they gave us to help us prepare for the visit. Honestly, other than I wasn't prepared for the whole fecal analysis thing and the trauma of that, but basically everything else was perfect. That meant we could just focus on living in the Philippines and all of the other things that we did to just enjoy being retired in the Philippines. We honestly could. And I would say not only just watching the testimony videos that they have posted on I can't remember if we saw any on YouTube, but definitely on their Facebook page, but and on their website, but also in expat groups on Facebook, people who went through the agency that shared their experiences in other groups where they didn't have to do that, but they did it anyway. Made me and my husband more comfortable with the agency that we chose. Could we have found maybe an agency that might have been cheaper? Sure. I think we could have. Is there an agency that would assist you for free that's related to the government? Possibly, because I'm investigating that for my husband, because my 13G visa means that he's attached to me. Now, he can travel in and out of the Philippines without me, but if something happened to me, if I pass away, he needs a different visa. And it's a perfect transition, because my next video for this playlist will focus on that, answering that question in regards to, so what happens to my husband if something happens to me, and all of the other questions that I had asked in regards to the 13G visa. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful to you, gave you a lot of answers to the time frame and if you should use a visa agency or not, and do whatever's best for you. I know for us, it worked perfectly for us, and we are just so grateful to JRC Visa Agency for everything they've done to just help us throughout our 13G process to become permanent residents. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'm so glad that you decided to hang out with me just for a little bit and find out what's new. So I will catch you later. Have a good one. Bye.